I came to the United States in 1975 and majored in philosophy and architecture at the University of Washington in Seattle. As a young student of philosophy, I attended a number of conferences in medieval philosophy, in Islamic philosophy, and so on. And I was struck by the fact that they use some peculiar terminology to define Islamic intellectual tradition, such as Arabic thought, Arabic philosophy, Arabic science. Gradually, I explored the reasons for that, and ironically, as it turns out, the West had discovered very few of Muslim philosophers. In particular, as far as Western tradition is concerned, they knew about Farabi, Avicenna, and Islamic philosophy ended with Averroes. And so, the fact that these three happen to be commentators of Plato and Aristotle, and therefore closest to Western philosophical tradition, is not a coincidence. When I became a student of Professor Nasser back in 1983, I discussed this matter with him, that the contribution of Persian philosophers and Persian philosophical tradition, which is the only living philosophical tradition past beyond the medieval period, is not fully recognized and appreciated. And it would be a great idea to highlight the contributions of Persian philosophers and the continuity of this tradition. I was happy that Dr. Nass was not only receptive to that, but he shared with me that this project actually in some form or fashion had begun earlier in Iran before the Iranian Revolution, and he encouraged me to continue with our collaboration. Initially, we conceived of a 2-volume project in which we would begin from early Islamic philosophy, Farabi, and come to maybe Sohrawardi or Mullah Sadr or something like that. And then the 2-volume became 3 and 4 and 5, and of course the intellectual tradition prior to Islam is of some significance, and we wanted to show the continuity of philosophical and intellectual tradition in Persia all the way to the present time. I myself was a student of Western philosophy. I studied analytical tradition and to some extent continental philosophy, and it's much easier in the West to go from period to period. We have Greek philosophy or ancient philosophy, and then medieval philosophy, modern philosophy, and contemporary philosophy. It is virtually impossible to follow that model when it comes to Islamic tradition. It's not, in Islam we don't have just a philosophical tradition. Philosophical tradition is also intertwined with theology, it's intertwined with intellectual intuition or a form of mysticism, not popular form of mysticism. It's also a means of refinement of character. There are several books by that very title. And so it is a combination, it's a rapprochement between discursive thought, metaphysical issues, ethics, practical and theoretical, and so on. And so we had to devise a model almost unique to this anthology to be able to not only cover philosophers who appeared in different periods, but also different schools of thought. For instance, Ghazali has written philosophy, he has written theology, he has written on Sufism. And so the question is, you can't include Ghazali in the time period in which he appeared. You have to split them up, and same with Nasser Khosrow, same with Nasiruddin Tusi, same with Mullah Sadra, and a number of other philosophers. So in that regard, it was a Herculean task to be able to divide certain segments of their ideas and put where they belong without disrupting the chronological order of it. So I would say overall we succeeded in creating a delicate balance between chronology and schools of thought combined. Generally speaking, we have early Islamic philosophy which thrived in Persia, and after the Mongol invasion, philosophy in Persia went into a period of eclipse, and then it was resurrected, so to speak, in the 17th century. Now, we have learned much more due to recent scholarship that even the period of so-called eclipse of Islamic philosophy in Persia, there was still a good bit of activities. But I think that the Mongol invasion temporarily put a hold on philosophical activities in Persia, and the center of such activities was shifted to Andalusia, North Africa, Spain, and so on. And then after the 14th century, when Islamic philosophy comes to an end after Averroes in North Africa and Andalusia, it comes back to Persia actually and continues continues to flourish in a very interesting way. Philosophers belonging to the school of Shiraz in 16th, 17th century, followed by a school of Isfahan, followed by a school of Qajar, school of Tehran, and so on, represents a continuous tradition of philosophy. And so when you read commentaries on Avicenna's Shafa, for example, in the 18th century, it is exactly the same as if you are reading Bahmaniyar's Kitab al-Tahsil, for example, which is also somewhat of a commentary on his own master, Avicenna. So the beauty of this tradition is that it, in a sense, cannot be divided into different periods in the schools, and yet it is intellectually vibrant and relevant to the concerns of modern philosophers even. This is actually a philosophical issue itself, to what extent philosophy and hikma are the same or different. I would say the early Islamic philosophy, up to Avicenna himself, was primarily philosophy in the Greek sense of the word. And after Avicenna, in particular Sohrawardi, becomes the founder of a type of wisdom which we refer to as hikma, Quranic term itself. And hikma is much more than just philosophy, discursive thought. It is a rapprochement between various dimensions of intellectual thought and intellection itself. So not only it is discursive thought and logic, but also mysticism, intellectual intuition, the practical side of philosophy, which Greeks were well aware of. And so later Islamic philosophy becomes much closer to what we know of as hikmah or wisdom or perennial wisdom. There are various names, theosophia. And so there's an evolutionary process from the early theological schools of thought to peripatetic philosophy to hikmah, which continues as of today. There are many. To begin with, we had the problem of finding the right texts. Not too many critical editions of Islamic philosophical texts exist. So among the existing ones, we had to choose the best of them. And then having chosen the best translators possible out there, many of whom are competent philosophers themselves, so for them, it became a task of not only translating the text, but also editing it simultaneously. And it made it even more difficult. So we put together a team of translators throughout the world, over 60 translators who were competent in philosophical language, philosophy itself, Arabic, English, Persian, and the task began. Of course, financing such a project is always a challenge, but thanks God we were able to overcome these difficulties. Whom to include was a major one. Of course, much scholarship is done on notable figures, so we tried to not only include the well-known figures such as Farabi and Avicenna and so on, but also the focus of the project was to introduce dozens of Persian philosophers about whom the West knows nothing. And I think we have succeeded in introducing over 76 philosophers by translating over 101 treatises. Many of them for the first time are being introduced to the English-speaking world. Without a comprehensive introduction to each and every philosopher, it would not be feasible or readable in a sense. We had to contextualize every philosopher insofar as who his students were and who his teachers were and in which period he wrote and his relationship to schools of thought before him and so on. And so that was one of the major achievements of this anthology, in that the introductions themselves provide a comprehensive view of the progress of Islamic philosophical tradition in Persia. Philosophy is the foundation upon which any intellectual paradigm is built. Unfortunately, most of the modern Muslims, especially the youth, know something about history and politics, but not philosophy. If you ask contemporary Muslims who was Avicenna or Averroes or Al-Ghazali, the answer is generally they were important people, they were profound thinkers, but very, very little is known about the intellectual heritage of Muslims. It is a miracle that the Islamic civilization has been able to produce 1,400 years of philosophical tradition with almost no gap in between it. I know of no other civilization that has been able to do that. And it is absolutely imperative to introduce the fundamental philosophical principles of Islamic tradition to the young Muslims today. So not only they are able to develop the critical mind that is essential in analyzing and interpreting just about any problem in various fields, but also to be able to confront the challenges, intellectual challenges of Western philosophical issues and questions. So for that, philosophy has and is and will be relevant to any period in which people ask the enduring questions of who we are, why are we, and so on.